In the next hour, I am going to give this collage-like lecture. I will have many images, show some projects. Then in the second part of the lecture, it will be more philosophical. It will be a bit of a roller coaster, so buckle up. But there's one thing that I want you to remind after the lecture, which I will already tell you, which is that we should think differently about the relationship between nature and technology. I will basically argue that we are now living in a time in which technology becomes so omnipresent, complex, autonomous, that we start to relate to it as a nature of its own. But before we get into the lecture, I want to share a movie which I saw some years ago, and I found it just very fascinating. It's the copy-paste bird.
Has the most elaborate, the most complex, the most beautiful song in the world. Well, I guess there are lots of contenders, but this bird must be one of them. The superb lyrebird of southern Australia.
He clears a space in the forest to serve as his concert platform. To persuade females to come close and admire his plumes, he sings the most complex song he can manage, and he does that by copying the songs of all the other birds he hears around him, such as the kookaburra. It's a very convincing impersonation. Even the original is fooled. He can imitate the calls of at least 20 different species. He also, in his attempt to outsing his rivals, incorporates other sounds that he hears in the forest. That was a camera shutter. And again. And now a camera with a motor drive. And that's a car alarm. And now the sounds of foresters and their chainsaws working nearby.
Okay, actually this is not a media art, this bird actually exists in Australia. Now I start the official part of the lecture. So, Sawadee, hello. I'm Koert van Mensvoort. I am an artist, I am a scientist, I am a designer, I am an engineer, I'm also a philosopher and a doctor and a blogger. So I guess in the end I'm more or less an amateur, I have to say. Definitely as an artist I am an amateur. This is one of the romantic natural paintings I try to make. But in my painting apparently this Hummer appeared. I work in all media, so this is an example of a project I did with water. This is the data fountain, and we see it here in a clip from the Japanese television. It's basically a fountain that's connected to the internet. So here you see stock traders looking at the fountain, which represents their money. The yen, the euro, and the dollar are every 5 seconds through an embedded system. They are taken from the internet and put upon the pump of the fountain. And actually you see changes every 5 seconds in the currency rates. So I made this because I thought, well,
例えば
people,
円の分水の一番下を
the money is so important for them, but they're always in the screen looking at it. What if we can give them sort of a natural phenomenon that shows them how the finances are doing? And here I explain it on Japanese television in Japanese, but we're in Thailand now, so we can skip that. You could do that. You could do that, of course, with plants as well. An embedded system. You water them according to the currency rates, and then you see your data plant. Or you could even go one step further. Well, this would be the data climate, that you have three suns in the environment: the yen, the euro, and the dollar. I don't know how technical you are, because there was some data projected on what kind of people are here. Many creative designers in the audience, not so many technologists. This would still be very difficult to implement, I must say. It's speculative, and we can think about it, and that's often part of my practice, to speculate on things and to invent things which aren't really possible yet. This is a product I did for the Coca-Cola company, organic Coke. I will talk more about that later. And actually I made a whole supermarket of speculative design fiction products. It's called the Nano Supermarket. This is the commercial. And basically in the Nano Supermarket we show products that might be on the shelves within the next 10 years. So you have a little code that changes its color interactively. You could maybe have a wine that you can program in the microwave. I will talk about that later. Change the taste of the wine. Of course, the smartwatch, that's already arriving, you know, and the wall smart I will talk about, interactive paint. So yeah, this is the Nano Supermarket, and I started this project because I realized nanotechnology is emerging, and I went on the street and I asked people, like, what do you know about nanotechnology? Have you heard of nanotechnology? And most people, they heard about it. They know it's something very small, and that's true, because nanotechnology is all technology on the scale of 1 billionth of a meter. So that's extremely small, and we can now study things, make things, and yeah, it's quite special. But in the end, the point is not that it's small. The question is, how will nanotechnology change our lives? That's the big discussion. So it's time for a nano debate. And this debate is taking place in magazines, on internet, in the newspapers, on television, you read about it. But I decided to take this debate, this nano debate, to a different realm, which is the supermarket. Now, why the supermarket? I think supermarket is just a fascinating space. We go there every week and we hardly think about it, but imagine for a moment that you would take a caveman, put him in a time machine, and then he would arrive in the supermarket here around the corner. He would not understand the powder milk, packaged meats, light products, or pregnancy tests. All these things that we have in our life for a caveman would be utterly futuristic. And this made me realize that the supermarket is actually the place where new technologies, but also new lifestyles, new habits, new products arrive. So I thought, let's have the nano debate in a supermarket and make a nano supermarket. This is our logo. We had different versions. Actually, this was the cheap one. But I decided to go for the black and white one because it had to be a supermarket noir. So it's in my supermarket, I'm not just presenting and celebrating the beautiful, nice innovations. I'm also showing the darker sides, the products you might not want. And I actually think the best products are the ones for this project where there are mixed feelings about, so that we can have a discussion. I designed this according to the supermarket I knew from the Netherlands, because I'm Dutch, and we have these mobile supermarkets. We used to have them driving through villages, and it's kind of nice, but it's also too retro. So you combine it with something futuristic, and then you have the nano supermarket. And it's now traveling all throughout Europe, many cities that we've been, not yet in Asia. So that's next, maybe, who knows. I will show some products. This is the most popular product, the Wall Smart Interactive Paint. Put it on the wall only once, and then you can change the color of your wall as many times as you like with your smartphone. And this works with magnetic nanorods. They bend the light, because at a nano level you can actually, well, this wall is red because all the white light that arrives is absorbed, except for the red part of the spectrum that's reflected. And on a nano level you could manipulate that different colors reflect. And then you can make the wall smart paint. Not yet. Today we can make like this small piece, and that's why you also see here on the feasibility indicator that it's not yet green. So we have to wait a little bit. This is a future product, but we can already discuss it and look at it. Another one, which already was in the commercial, is the nano wine, a programmable wine. It contains nano capsules, nano encapsulation, and they're very small. So if I drink the wine, it just goes through my body. I will not notice, but I can also open them, and then they will alter the taste of a wine. And I do this in the microwave, so not for a long time, only for a few seconds to open these nano capsules, and then that's how you change the taste of the wine. A more, well, debatable product even is this, the energy belt. Body fat is always seen as a liability, but what if we could gain electrical energy from our own belly fat and then charge our mobile phone with it? That would be big business. And would you want it? Who would want this, you know? Yeah. Maybe not yet, although you could also use it to charge your Twitter implant. The Twitter implant is it's put in your jaw, and it will simply tweet everything that happens inside your body. So if I go running and I live a healthy lifestyle, it's being Twittered, and my whole social network knows I have a healthy lifestyle, and I get it for free with my health insurance, because they want this information. But of course, if I drink too much of the nano wine, it's also being Twittered, and then maybe I get a health penalty. I have to pay more. So, yeah, who would want this? I guess, nah, we don't want this. But then the question is, where's the border? Where do you stop? We also have more nice utopian products like this energy-friendly algae lamp. Basically, it's a colony of algae that's in the lamp as an alternative solar panel. Photosynthesis, the algae live from it, and then you drain some energy from these algae to lit the light. And you also notice that when you use the light too often, the algae will die. So you have a very direct relation between biology and technology. That's also the case here, especially for Thailand, because I know Thailand, it's quite famous in the world for that it has so much stingray leather, and this is a next step, the rayfish stingray leather shoe, but it's made of genetically modified stingray leather, and for this product we made a separate commercial, which I will now show. So at the fictional fish farm facility in Thailand, these stingrays are grown, but the assumption is that if we can hack the DNA of the fishes, we can put any pattern that we want on the skin of the fish. And you could design it on the website, you can actually put it, and then at the end of a good life in the fish farm, it will be turned into this bio-customized shoe. So who would want to buy such a shoe? Would you buy it? Yes or no? These questions have meaning, because if we look at the different products, then, well, the rayfish shoe, it's sort of hedonistic, pleasure-oriented, individual pleasure kind of product, whereas, some of the other products I've shown, they're more purposeful, altruistic. So we track this, and also on the website of the Nano Supermarket, people can decide which products they would buy or would not buy. And you pick some products, like for instance the pharmaceutical sushi. Would you buy it? Well, maybe not, maybe yes. And you pick six products, and then after you've done that, you get your personalized technology profile. So it might be that you are a techno-utopist, or you could be a green guardian, or you're just an emotional shopper. It's for many people the case. There are 16 profiles, and you can do this right now or after the talk on nanosupermarket.org. So this project is about how to discuss technology before it arrives into our lives, because I often feel we are leaping a little bit behind on technological developments, as if we are sleepwalking into the technological future. And of course I have to emphasize that the products I show, they are speculative. They're based on current technology, but they're not possible yet. However, the discussion we have in the nano supermarket is 100% fact and 100% real. Okay, now to continue, I want to go to another topic which is related. I want to talk a little bit about simulations, because later I will argue that much of what we think of as nature is in fact a simulation of nature. And I will talk a little bit about simulations by presenting another product I did. It's a philosophical game. It's the Fake for Real memory game. And actually, the person who asked the best question after the talk wins this game. But what is it? It's a memory game. You have two cards and then you have to collect them and find them. So for instance, on this card you see the Matterhorn, and then on the other card, oh no wait, that's the Matterhorn, and the one on the right there, that's the bobsleigh attraction in Disneyland, disguised as the Matterhorn. So one is real, one is fake, okay. But often it's more confusing, like every scuba diver nowadays, at least for 3 seconds, when you see the real white-orange striped clownfish, you will think, hey, it's Nemo! You just cannot suppress it, it just happens. So this shows how media influence also our perception of reality. If you go shopping, well, on the one hand we have the classical design chair from the Finnish designer Alvaro Aalto, but then on the right we have the Swedish interpretation, and the one on the left cost I think 1,800 euros, so how many baht would that be? And the other one is much cheaper, and you even get that extra piece of wood with it, you see, to make it fully monkey proof, designed for the masses. So fake and real. Also, yeah, at the famous burger joint McDonald's, I don't know, that muddy, greasy burger that I have on my plate, that's not the fresh, delicious burger that I picked from above the counter, right? So here we see that images become more important than the actual object. That's also weird, because we thought images represent reality, but it's here, it seems to be the other way around. And yeah, with cola, you also see something, you cannot beat the real thing, but then some generations prefer something else. But nowadays, with all these light products, no one drinks real cola anymore. So what happened to the real? Is it gone? Is it the authentic? Where is it? It's kind of depressing in a way. Yeah, here we see, this is, I think for me it's very fascinating that on the left we see Michael Jackson, the king of pop, at the age of 50, and on the right we see a computerized image made by forensic artists, which plotted out what Michael Jackson would have looked like at the age of 50 if he would never have started doing plastic surgery at all. So of course the image on the right, it's manipulated in the computer, but the image on the left, it's manipulated in the physical space. So what's real? It's so confusing in our world. It's terrible. I now need my medicine, you know, but Prozac, Viagra, placebo, ecstasy, which one doesn't fit in the row? Candy, where exactly is the border between medical necessity and entertainment drugs? Maybe that's also a matter of taste. So reality arrives in our lives in all kinds of flavors. But then my final example, I find it very inspiring, and it's very simple, because on the left we see a leaf. There's nothing happening, it's just a leaf. But on the right we see the Phyllium giganticum, the walking leaf. And this is an insect that disguises itself as a leaf. So this learns us that copying, media, simulation, it's part of life. It's part of nature. And I thought about this for quite a while, like, what does it mean, you know? Because I am a philosopher, at least part-time. So what does it mean? And I arrived at the following conclusion. Next, nature. Yeah, so I will try to read out loud. I think we all know the drill. Nature changes along with us. Nature, in the sense of trees, plants, animals, atoms, or climate, is getting increasingly controlled and governed by man. It has turned into a cultural category. At the same time, products of culture, which used to be in control of man, tend to outgrow us and become autonomous. So the natural powers seem to shift to another field. Our established view on nature needs to be reconsidered, and we propose this term next nature for this culturally emerged nature. Next nature is real nature. It's not some simulation or representation of a long-lost phenomenon. Highways, airports, supermarkets are all part of our natural environment. And there may even come a moment that our connection with an industrially manufactured Coke bottle becomes more mythical than our relationship with a genetically analyzed rabbit in the woods. Wild systems, genetic surprises, calm technology, autonomous machinery. I never make it. I'm sorry, but I still have some time. And the remainder of the lecture I will talk about basically explaining this next nature phenomenon and what it means. And I want to start with, if I can get the image back, I want to start with an example from my own life where I thought, what is happening here? This is what you see is in the Netherlands. It's in the dunes. I was walking there with a friend in the dunes when I saw this strange tree sticking out amidst all the other trees. And we went closer to take a look, like what is happening here? And it turned out that this is not a tree at all. It is a cell phone antenna mast disguised as a tree. Now why? You know, I'm not here to promote this design. I think it's just fascinating. Why do we do this? And for me there are two reasons, two interesting stories here. On the one hand, it shows that we try to turn our environment and build our environment according to an idealized notion or image of nature. Secondly, it also shows that technology becomes so part of the fabric of everyday life that it becomes invisible, and we also don't want to recognize it as technology. So we want to walk in an untouched landscape, but with cell phone coverage. That's sort of the situation we are in. And I think we can all agree that this tree, it's not nature. It's more a picture of nature, like a landscape painting you could hang above your couch, but then put in the environment. So this is, how images of nature can sell almost anything. And if you look around, and this is actually, I know it's a Sunday, but I'm giving you some homework. Your homework is for the next week to look in your own environment and find examples where products try to sell themselves using images of nature. And you will find a lot of examples. I did some studying myself. So for instance, Apple, it's not a fruit company. Lacoste does not sell crocodiles. The Puma shoes, they're not made of pumas. They just refer to the sporty image of the animal. Then there's the more cynical category of just painting things green, like this green Hummer, which is just a little bit less polluting than the previous model, and then we brand it eco-friendly. What does it mean? And finally, there's this category of organic products, which I think is also interesting. Products that are made according to the principles and in harmony with nature, although it's hardly ever articulated what it exactly means. What you see here is an ecological insecticide, so you can kill off nature, but in a nature-friendly way. And the moment organic Coke hits the shelf, we know that this development has reached its summit of greenwashing, green painting. And now these examples are funny, we laugh about them. They're also a bit shocking, it's happening, we don't always realize it. But there's a more important story hidden underneath, which is that while all these marketeers and designers make these naturalized products, at the same time they're also marketing a certain image of nature. Nature as the beautiful, harmonic, balanced, and inherently good quality of life. And at the same time, the more darker sides of nature, like the extreme cruelty, unpredictability, diseases, infections, amoral qualities, they are never articulated in these brandings. So as a result, our image of nature is, I think, a bit naive. We are a little bit dreamy about it. And hardly ever do we ask the question, what is actually nature? What is our image of nature? How is it constructed? And if we ask this question, I'm asking it now, then I think we should begin at the beginning. That's then really the beginning, because the beginning of our planet. It is now about 4.5 billion years ago since our planet came into existence. And at first it was just this lonely rock floating in space. It had a geosphere, but it took 3 billion years, that's incredibly long, for a biosphere to evolve on planet Earth. Plant life, later animals, of course, and then 1 billion years later, we, people, arrived. And now we are here on the planet, and according to my view, we are adding this new sphere to the planet, which you could call the technosphere. And just like the biosphere interacts with and builds upon the geosphere, also this technosphere interacts with and builds upon the biosphere. So it is a simple message. Evolution goes on. And I think we all know Darwin, the story of evolution, which was presented about a little over 150 years ago. But when we think of nature, we often still have this biblical idea of the paradise that, but the truth is, of course, very different. We are all already born in a world that has been designed completely. Everything has been designed. Look in the room you are in now and try to find the most natural thing in this room. Probably the most natural thing in this room is you, people. You know, you are it still. But for the rest, our entire environment has been designed, made by people. And nowadays, young children, they know more brands and logos than birds or tree species. That's the situation we are in. And some children, they don't like chicken, but they do love dinosaur. And for me, as a speculative designer, it's interesting, it's kind of surrealistic. I try to extrapolate on these kind of things that exist in our lives. So then I think, okay, maybe the next thing would be a dinosaur leg, or a saber-tooth fillet, maybe. Of course, these are surrealistic images. They're not real. They're crazy. But if you think about it, the meat that we have today, like the sausages, I think it's also kind of crazy that it's 100% made out of animal, but you cannot recognize the animal in it. And we think this is normal because it's all around us, and then it's normal. But if you think about it, it's quite kind of crazy. So where will this go? How will this develop? Maybe in 30 years this is normal, to have your own meat printer in your kitchen, that you grow your own meat. Could happen. I don't know. Of course, this image of the meat printer is very speculative still. The home meat incubator. But the image you see here, that's science fact. That's happening today, growing meat. And surely we have to think about the future of meat. We have to talk about this, because the greenhouse gases that are emitted by meat production is sort of 15% of all the greenhouse gases. related to meat production. The overconsumption, of course. Do we eat too much meat? Think of all the land that's used to grow crops for the animals that eat it, and then we eat them as meat. That's an enormous amount. And if you just extrapolate towards 2050 and there will be 9 billion people on the planet, then we will need 3 planets. So that's something has to happen here. At the same time, there are also still people who have not enough food. And then I haven't even talked about the animal welfare and the animal diseases, these stories that we also know here. So what about the meat of the future? What are the options? So one option, of course, is to just ignore everything and continue like we do now. That's option number 1. Of course, you can become a vegetarian. It's a good option as well. Eat more insects. Well, in Asia, people are more evolved towards this already, but in the West, this is difficult. And then the fourth option is to make in vitro meat, to grow meat in the lab. So I want to explore this option. I decided to focus on this because I thought it was interesting. And the process is the following. So you would take a few cells from an animal, you put them in a petri dish, in a lab, in a bioreactor actually. You have to add, of course, energy and food. And then you make little strings, which in the end you can turn into a piece of meat. And many of these pieces now, today, they look like this. But a year ago, Dutch scientist Mark Post presented the first lab-grown hamburger, and it cost only 250,000 euro. So of course, yeah, it was a prototype, very expensive still. It was paid for by, not everyone knows this, by Sergey Brin from Google. He paid for it. He thought it was interesting technology for the future. And so yeah, now we have this first lab-grown hamburger. It is a prototype. I've been looking at it, talking to the scientists, working with them a bit, but yeah, for me this is very much a horseless carriage. You know, like the first cars were called horseless carriages because we did not have the notion of a car yet. And now with the new in vitro meat technology we try to create the products that we already know today. I think, can we just be a little bit more creative, please? So I made this decision to jump into this space 3 years ago and explore the whole potential, the creative potential of in vitro meat. Just envision with all my students and co-workers, envision everything that you could envision with in vitro meat. And we decided to make a cookbook, which is out now. And it's the in vitro meat cookbook. But the interesting thing is that it's a cookbook with 45 recipes you cannot cook yet. And I will show some of the recipes. Again, they're speculative. I'm inventing things that are not yet entirely possible. Magic meatballs for the children. Just make playful meatballs with in vitro meat for the children, and they can be more healthy than the meatballs of today. Well, the dodo nugget, that's an opportunity. It's an extinct animal, the dodo, but we still have some cell material. And as kids like the dinosaur nuggets, which is, by the way, it's too difficult. The dinosaur DNA, it's too degraded. But with the dodo, we can do it. We could make the dodo nugget for them, if they would want it. Of course, that's the next question. If growing a whole steak, it's too difficult still. But if we can make long threads of meat, then we could knit our steak. And it could be this craft, you know, that you do at home. That you knit a little piece of steak from the meat thread. That's the first application, of course. This is quite doable, we think. Hybrids between meat and fruit. You know, if this space opens up, you start to construct meat from the ground up, then you can make anything you can think of. So meat fruit as an amuse might be nice. We call this veggie-morphism. Because it's veggie, it's vegetarian, and actually another example is the meat flour, which you put in a broth, and then it would open up, and you have this nice meat flour. And this is inspired because many of the vegetarian alternatives, they simply try to copy existing sausages and burgers, which I think is, well, then you're creating this inferior derivative, this fake. But if you look at the creative potential and the new things, then maybe you think of something like a meat flour. Then there are also people who say, no, it's meat from the lab, it's technological food, I just want it to look like that. So that would be the lab pearls. And we call this honest from the lab. Yeah, it is transparent, at least, that if you cannot eat all that meat from animals anymore, you eat meat from the lab and it looks like meat from the lab. In the lab, you could also do things you cannot do outside the lab. Yeah? You could make a transparent sashimi or a sushi, because it's grown under these controlled conditions, and there are no microbes, because it's really in a controlled setting. You could grow meat that's softer and better than the best meat you have ever tasted. So that's also an opportunity. Or how about a 3D printed marrow bone that you put in your broth as well. This is more the rustic in vitro, trying to look like authentic Italian sausages, but inside they have a very advanced bioreactor which also grows it. And we call this new authentic because it's futuristic, but it's also referring to a tradition, so that there's often some interesting space in between. And it might happen here with these are the bone pickers, because for many people this idea of eating meat from a piece of bone, there's some deep intuition that relates to it. And yeah, if the meat is from the lab, you don't have that anymore, but maybe we make special bone pickers or bone utensils, and then you can in fact have that feeling of feeding your inner caveman still, you know, with the bone utensils. A meat oyster, it's something you think of in an afternoon. It's simple, and I realize that some of these examples that I give you, they are a bit disturbing, crazy, but that's also the purpose. It's the purpose to explore the whole space. So not only what I desire, I just explore everything that might happen, and then we have a discussion on what we want to happen. And I think so far it's already interesting, but this is one next step even, that if you grow meat from cells of an animal without having to slaughter the animal, then you could also do this with human cells. And here we see an example of a piece of jewelry which is connected to your body and also grows a little piece of meat on your own body, which you can then grow for 3 months. And after 3 months you harvest it from your own body and you serve it probably to a loved one in a very intimate dinner. And you can say it's horror, it's terrible. Some people find it poetic. I don't know, it's up to you to decide. It is something of now, I think, because we already concluded that we are the most natural thing in the room, but increasingly the human body is also seen as a medium that can be harvested, that can be manipulated, that can be molded. And where does this go? You know, I try to just make an open question. Where does it go? Where do we end? Well, don't worry, this is a Photoshop. There's not really a lady walking around with these high heels. I'm also not sure if this is the ultimate female agony or fashion statement. But it's a metaphor, and I think as an image, it's an important image of our time, because this exemplifies one of the big stories of our time, which is that we are now living in a time in which the born and the made are fusing. Born things and made things, they are blending. And traditionally we thought of born things as nature. The climate, the universe, it's all born and it's natural. We call it natural. And cultural things, they are made. But this is now blending or fusing. Actually, I think it's not just blending, it's shifting. And I want to explain that with a simple graph. If I put on one axis born versus made, and I put on another axis autonomous versus controlled, then I've now made 4 quadrants, and I can put all kinds of things in it to analyze the situation. So in the born controlled, a rainbow tulip, a bonsai tree, a genetically modified banana or chicken. These are all born things, natural things, that are now with our science and technology, they came under human control. They're almost pieces of design now. You cannot, I tend to not call this nature anymore because we design it. We design the rainbow tulip. Of course, there's still a lot of born nature left, which is completely beyond our control. Think of viruses, volcanoes, lightning, or the sun. The sun is just so much bigger than us. We have no control over it at all. Then on the made side, the made control side, we can put some things like a car, a telephone, a robot dog, or a light bulb. It's not too interesting, but this upper quadrant, I think there things become interesting as well. Made and beyond control, what's happening there? There are traffic jams, digital networks, computer viruses, and the financial system. We made this system, but are we still controlling it? Or does it gain a certain autonomy? It's growing its own way, and how do we cope with that? And now my argument is very simple, that traditionally we used to think of everything that's born as the natural, but now it's maybe better to shift this and say that everything that grows beyond our control we consider natural. But of course in this upper right quadrant there's something happening there which is really forcing us to shift our thinking, because we have a nature caused by people there. And traditionally we used to think of technology and nature as opposites, like black and white, like day and night. But here you see that our technologies can become autonomous and cause the rising of this next nature. So that's also a big story of our time. And I realize it's kind of abstract, but to give you a concrete example from your own life, and I think if I look around in the room, I think everyone in the room is still old enough to have lived without a mobile phone. You know, we're not like this baby, not yet. Our children, you know, and there was this moment that the phone was introduced, and at that time it was just new, and you thought, well, maybe I should buy one because other people around me they have one, and you bought one, and now when you leave your house without your phone, something is missing. Just admit it. You know, you feel naked. You feel something is missing. So you quickly run back to your house to get your 5th limb. And the phone is not part of your body. That's not the point. But it is part of your lifestyle and identity. And that is the point. That's important. And this is not new. You know, if I would have given this lecture like a century ago in this room, I could not have talked about mobile phones, but I might have talked about electric light. A century ago, electric light was a new technology, and it had to be explained to people with little plates in the hotel rooms where it was introduced. This room is equipped with Edison electric lights. Do not attempt to light with a match. Simply turn the key on the wall by the door. People did not know what electric light was. And also the disclaimer, which is too small to read for you, I will read it aloud. The use of electricity for lighting is in no way harmful to health, nor does it affect the soundness of sleep. This is not something we worried about, but a century ago people did worry about it because it was new, it was a new technology. And now imagine if I would have given this lecture 10,000 years ago. I could have not talked about mobile phones or electric lights, I would have talked about agriculture. Today, if we look at these ladies planting crops, then we say this is nice, organic farming, craft. But 10,000 years ago, agriculture was a radical new technology. Before that, we used to live the hunting and gathering life on the savannah. And at that time, we settled down, planted crops, and at that time that was a radical intervention also in the natural environment. And now, of course, it's completely natural that you cannot imagine life without agriculture. One more example, even older, it's cooking. 200,000 years ago, people started for the first time to pre-digest their food before the eating. So you would basically extend your stomach in the outer world, cook your food, pre-digest it, and then eat it, so that you could gain more calories in less time, and as a result grow a bigger brain and a smaller stomach. And basically that's how we became human. So this technology of cooking, or this technique, is part of the human history. So if you look at this entire human history of technology, from the Stone Axe to fire, to agriculture I already mentioned, the wheel, writing, money, the Industrial Revolution, unto today's info, bio and nanotechnologies, if you oversee that whole development, then you immediately realize that we humans, we are technological by nature. And basically, we are doing the same thing all over again, which is we are playing with fire. That's what we do. And you can say you should not play with fire. In a way, yeah, you should not do it, but it's also what we do as humans. And this will never end, because every time we invent something new, there are also new powers, but new responsibilities, new problems as well. And nature will never let us relax. Rather, it just changes along with us. And now, once you have this next nature thinking, this next nature vision, then the world looks a little bit different. And I want to show some examples from my own life where I think, okay, this is one example. These are all the razors that I use throughout my life. So the first one, this little stick with 2 blades, I had when I was 17, and this morning I was shaving myself with a 6-bladed, battery-powered monster that looks a bit like a vacuum cleaner. It even has a lead in it. And I wonder, is this evolution? Many people will say no, because we make this. But then perhaps we should look at it as a co-evolution. Like the bees and the flowers co-evolved, are we now co-evolving with our technology? And then where will this go? Who will be in power? What's the relation? I read in the newspaper biodiversity is decreasing, and it's not a good thing. Then I walk in the supermarket and I see an enormous amount of biodiversity. Should we call this biodiversity? No, maybe technodiversity is increasing, biodiversity is decreasing. What's the relation? Should we start to look at the financial system also as an ecosystem in its own right? And if we do that, then what can farmers and what can we learn from farmers who have extensive experience of dealing with semi-autonomous ecologies like the weather and climate? Could we also transfer that to the financial system maybe? How will we build? That's also a question. Will we continue to just make blueprints and then put down a building and that's it until it deteriorates? Or could we have different methodologies? Like this I find very inspiring. These are the root bridges in India, simply connecting roots on 2 opposite sides of the river, and then after a while you've guided the growth of the trees and you have built a bridge. Is this the new architecture? Maybe we will not be guiding roots, but as a methodology, can we use this also in a city full of concrete? And then how will we guide the growth of this phenomenon? And no, this is not a solar system far, far away, much closer than you think. This is a map of the internet. Every computer plotted as one dot, and all the lines between the computers are also plotted. And then you get this structure, which looks a bit like a natural phenomenon. I think it's beautiful. It's not designed. There was not someone who said, this is what it should look like. It kind of emerged. And it's all around us. So like the fish who don't know it's wet, we are swimming in a fully technologized environment. And often we are just sleepwalking through it. We don't really have a guideline on how new technologies are introduced in our lives, how they are presented. And I want to use the last 10 minutes of the talk to present a new model, which is called the Pyramid of Technology, that addresses this. It's inspired on the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. In 1943, scientist Abraham Maslow presented this hierarchy of human needs. And basically the idea was that all the lower needs need to be fulfilled before you can go to a higher level. So physical needs at the bottom, a schizophrenic tramp only at the level at physical needs, most of us somewhere in the middle, and then maybe the nurse that helps the tramp is even higher on this pyramid. Now, I thought if we do this for technology, can we make a similar model, a pyramid of technology? And what would be the lowest level at which a technology can function? I think that the lowest level definitely has to be the envisioned level. There always has to be an idea. Every new technology starts with a dream, a vision, before it can arrive in our society. So, for instance, quantum computing, it's envisioned. People think about it, they work on it. Also the time machine, it's envisioned for already centuries. But I have not yet seen a working prototype. But it operates on this envisioned level, and satellites, they were invented or envisioned by Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer, in around 1940. And it took over a decade before the first satellite was actually launched into orbit as a test. And then this satellite also was lifted to the second level, the operational level. At the operational level, a working prototype exists. I already discussed the lab-grown meat. We have a prototype, there's one hamburger. It's very, very expensive. It's not yet applied, it's at an operational level. At the applied level, well, technologies become affordable, available and affordable. And an example of this, which is now quite widely available, is solar panels, although it's still trying to push up. And it's also competing with other technologies, like nuclear power, which is applied, but also still problematic. So this also shows that technologies are not rising individually, but it's always a network and a fight. Who's striving for the top? The next level is the accepted level. And the smartphone, well, that's the example of a technology that so rapidly went all up to the accepted level. Also cars, televisions and GPS systems, they function at an accepted level. And personally, I'm already this kind of guy. For me, the GPS, I cannot really navigate the city without it anymore. I'm not able to read a map anymore. I always use my GPS. So for me, the GPS is already a vital technology, hard to live without. Vital technologies are the technologies that if you would remove them from society, you would have a crisis. So an example is also sewage. Just imagine that we would remove, like that, all sewage systems from Bangkok. That would be a big mess, I think. And a more recent example of a vital technology is, of course, the internet. It only exists for less than a century, but it's still very vital. And you can ask yourself the question, would you rather live without sewage or without internet? Which one is more vital? It's quite hard to answer. At a higher level, technologies become invisible, and the example I want to show here is the alphabet. The alphabet is an example of an invisible technology. As a child, you have to spend a lot of time mastering the alphabet, but then you forget about it. And writing is everywhere, not only books, magazines, newspapers, also signage, even graffiti. It's used. It's an omnipresent technology, but it's really an ancient information technology. Also, the clock is another example, which structures our lives with more precision than the measures of year, month, and day. It's invisible. We don't notice it anymore until the alarm bell rings in the morning. And then you notice that sometimes you're also domesticated by the technologies around you. They not only serve you, you also start to serve them. And especially when technologies become vital, this is quite a tricky thing. Then at the summit, well, I think maybe you can already guess the most ultimate a technology can reach level is the naturalized level. or to become indistinguishable from nature. Clothing is an example. It's just very natural that we use clothing. I already talked about agriculture as an example, which is a technology, but you cannot imagine living without. And of course, cooking as well. I don't mean the image of the barbecue, but the technology of cooking. So if we look at the entire pyramid with all the layers, there are some things to be learned. That new technologies always, they start out as being artificial and alien. Then if they are successful, they become more familiar and accepted. If they're really successful, they feel like a second nature, and the ultimate level is that it becomes a first nature. And so if you see it here, then it's very clear, but you also see that different professions focus on different levels. So for instance, the envisioned level, there you see poets, science fiction writers, artists, people like Jules Verne, who envisioned the submarine 1.5 centuries ago. At an operational level, you see more principal scientists, people like Nikola Tesla, who envisioned wireless electricity a century ago. The applied man level, that's more Thomas Edison, half inventor, half businessman. And at the accepted level, I think Steve Jobs deserves the credit there for, he did not invent the MP3 standard. He also did not invent the Sony Walkman, but he combined these existing technologies in an utterly successful and acceptable product. Often designers play a role at these levels. At the vital level, I've found it quite difficult to find someone, but then I realized that maybe a politician like Barack Obama, because not that the guy itself is vital, but with his attempt to turn healthcare into a basic human right, while at the same time trying to get rid of the idea that a gun is a vital necessity of every American, he's kind of functioning on that level. At the visible level, it's also more difficult. It's not the typical professions, maybe teachers who learn children to read and write, and also digital skills nowadays. And then at the naturalized level, who's operating there? I think parents, who learn children that they should not run around naked. But the interesting thing that many of the technology professions and also the design professions, they are more at the lower level. So you should also ask yourself the question, at which level am I working in my project or in my practice? At which level am I operating? And to me it seems that many people are often working at these lower 4 levels. And this also relates to how we think and talk about technology. Many people have this informal definition of technology as anything that was invented after you were born. That's what we call technology. Or even worse, anything that doesn't quite work yet. That's what we perceive as technology. So it's always these lower levels, and the higher levels we don't perceive it as technology anymore. While it's quite important that if we want a rewarding technological future, I think we have to bring these higher levels in place, because as a result of this system we are settling for partial solutions. We dream of being able of telepathy, and then we settle for a mobile phone with an empty battery. We can dream of being able to fly like a bird, but then we settle for a crowded airport. If only we would be able to push our dreams and our technologies up to the top, you would see that it would resemble our dreams much more. So also when you have your vision towards where the project should go, the technology should go, how do you bring it to the top? That's the question we should ask ourselves. And I'm not saying it will be easy. In fact, it will be very difficult. But if we try to do it, we also realize that we no longer have to go back to nature, but rather we can go forward to nature. And that's an important message, going forward to nature. And then I want to end with the final slide. Thank you. This again, because for once and for all now, we need to realize that we caused the rising of this technosphere. Not you, it was already happening before you were born, but we are intervening in it. And we cannot entirely control it, but we should ask our question to how do we guide the growth? And maybe we can still learn from our experience with the biosphere and transform methods to this technosphere. And we can try to balance the spheres. We can develop an ecological intelligence also towards these kind of technologies to bring them together. And that's an important message because in the end there are three spheres, but of course it's all happening on one planet, and that's our planet. Thank you.
What do you think about the people who call your ideas are crazy?
I try to be modest and discreet, and I respect them because I think it's very important that my ideas are not only stuck in a niche of people who think it's great, but also the people who think it's crazy. I think what is crazy today can be normal or natural tomorrow, and I'm also working on catalyzing that and discussing that. So my short answer would be I highly respect the people who think my ideas are crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Koert van Mensvoort.